when the media reporters marginalize city council. What you're here for is what city council does, which is legislate. And it's a majority vote that passes an ordinance, which is a law. So when I see column after column marginalizing the city council, which is a disservice to the citizens of the city of Tampa, who voted these people here. And they said, you all need to be like everyone else. We are, just like our constituents. Every single member on city council has a second job in order to meet their bills and maybe pay for their children's college, help an elderly or just live. And the main reason they have a second job is so that they can serve on city council. So that's what we do. We legislate, we pass ordinances, which are laws. Thank you.
Any clarification? I don't have a second job. This is my job.
You don't work for your boyfriend anymore?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm a full-time. I'm a full-time city council member, and I live on every penny of that salary that we get.
Chair, I don't think everyone.
I don't know, but.
All right, let's swear.
Don't worry.
Just for clarification,
I'll
we are not going to be voting for free marijuana for city council members.
And Beach TV just posted
Let me ask you a couple questions about the issue at hand. Currently, under state law and the way that we enforce the possession of less than 20 grams of marijuana, it is currently a state misdemeanor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. What's the fines or the I should say the punishment for having less than 20 grams of marijuana?
I believe it's up to 1 year in jail and a fine, although I'm not positive of the amount.
Right. So you could say you could spend a year in county jail and maybe some additional fines plus whatever your service time is. Correct. Last time you were here, you mentioned that there were about 1,900 offenders that you think this will affect if we decriminalize that under 20 grams of marijuana. Is that correct? I think that was a rough number that you all had come up with.
It's a rough number, and that's the number of misdemeanor marijuana arrests in, I believe, 2014, maybe 15.
Right.
Chief Ward had that number. There are some other criteria attached to this program, and not all of those people, I assume, would meet the criteria attached to this program, so the number is likely to be substantially less than that.
And maybe half of it or something in that neighborhood. Maybe. I'm not going to make you speculate about that, but let's just go out of numbers. Regardless, I mean that's 800 people that we are not going to put more time on our police force in order to try and find more folks with less than 20 grams of marijuana. Obviously, there's a lot of specifics as part of this specific ordinance in which we're really trying to get people out of the system and make sure that if they do offend, they don't offend again. They pay their fine. We do not want them into jail or possibly keep offending and then become a prisoner somewhere in our state system. So obviously the reason why we're doing this, and this is what I'm getting at, is that we want to try and get some folks out of the system, give them a second chance if they don't want to offend again, and find a way that we can eliminate the use of our resources to go after a crime that currently is a misdemeanor. And that's essentially what the administration has asked us to do. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. That's all I want to get.
Just one quick question of clarification, and I'm very interested to hear what the public has to say this afternoon, or this morning, I should say, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk and ask questions after that. But this is about possession of cannabis as well as paraphernalia. Is it still against the law for a person to smoke marijuana in a public place?
Yes.
So that behavior is not being decriminalized along with the possession.
Very true, correct.
Okay, so we're just clarifying that this does not apply to people that decide to light up in a city park, for example?
The ordinance as it's written applies to mere possession, and obviously you wouldn't be smoking if you weren't in possession. So we don't anticipate, obviously, people openly smoking marijuana. They would be immediately subject to not only this ordinance, they would be subject at the discretion of the officer to the state statute, which remains in existence even if we pass this ordinance.
And that, the key word there is the discretion of the officer, correct? Because part of this program really relies on the officers to use discretion in the way that they determine to move forward, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just ask you, I noticed that this ordinance, we're talking about 4 different occasions a person can be fined before any serious action takes place. Is that not correct on this?
In a scaled up process, yes, sir.
It's 4 different occasions. Given consideration, why 4? I had a chance to think about this more and more. And that's what I'm thinking, why would you give a person 4 opportunities? And why could we yes, 2, you get fined $75 one time, you fined, you done it again, you fined up to $100,000. Why continue at least 4 occasions and before you want to take some serious action? I have a concern about that, as I had a chance to review this more and more, and I'm not comfortable with giving anyone 4 opportunities to move forward with this, and I just wondered if you had any feedback pertaining to it.
That issue too is at the discretion of the police officer involved. So say the first citation was given to an 18-year-old. If that person were to reoffend 2 months later, got the second citation, and 2 months after that offended a 3rd time. So in the course of 4 months, basically, there have been 3 separate offenses. I expect it to occur to the officer that this program is not working for that offender. And the officer would still have the option of taking that person the misdemeanor route to jail the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, but here's the problem, and no disrespect to the officer, but what they're doing is giving the officer this role of discretion, and the mindset of the officer can be positive or can be negative. And the problem I have is you put a burden of responsibility in the decision-making process in the hand of officers. Where they become to be sociologists or psychologists, where they make a determination, but do I give this person another opportunity? Do I go ahead and arrest this person, find this person? And I don't think the officers should be put in that type of position where they got to be making this type of decision. Their job is to protect the service, not to serve as babysitters. And this is what you're leading them to do, where they got to sit there and make this discretionary decision. And I don't think that's fair to those officers out on the beat, where they got to make, this young man, he's fined him 1 time. Now this person is in possession again, and do I this time fine him and cite him again, or do I refer him to a program and treatment, or what do I do? And I think you're putting officers in a bad position to have to make those decisions. So I'm not confident in that role, but Mr. Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along those same lines, it's confusing when you say $75 the first time, $150 the second time, $300 the third time, and $450 in any subsequent time. Does that mean forever? You can have you arrested 100 times as long as you pay $450 after your 3rd time. You can do it. Am I correct? Yes. So then a rich guy, not I, not you, but somebody that had that kind of money, if they wanted to do it just to showcase that they could do it without even smoking it, they could carry it around, never have a record. They could be a dealer. And it's all right because you pay the full fee. That's the way this thing's written, in my opinion. Now, secondly, can a police officer smoke a joint and still have a job if he or she is called?
So what's the answer to that?
Well then, how about can somebody pay $75 and it's go away for them? Isn't that confusing to a police officer?
My answer to that is absolutely not confusing, and Chief Ward will certainly make crystal clear that issue to the
But
police officer.
that could be a problem in the future. And I agree with Chairman Reddick. You know, consumption of cigarettes is on the way down, but marijuana is on the way up. 1 in 10 children in Hillsborough County at one time has smoked a joint, from what I've read. 1 in 4 students, this is on a consistent time, 1 in 10, has occasionally smoked a joint some years in the past. So what we're saying is, or marijuana, cigarette, whatever you want to call it, but what I'm saying is, we, in my opinion, we're backdooring legalization of something that the federal government, President Obama just asked Congress for $1 billion to fight drugs. Now, I don't know what kind of drug he's talking about, but I would imagine it's all of them. The illegal sales at the drugstore, that happens all the time. In fact, you get a prescription from a doctor now for OxyContin, it'll take you days to get 1 or 2 pills. They don't just give it to you. They check the record, how many times you bought it. They do a lot of checking. So what we're doing here, in my opinion, is creating a situation that'll be, you're putting a police officer, in my opinion again, to be a sociologist, like Chairman Reddick said, a psychiatrist, and a judge all at the same time. And that's putting an awful burden on your police department. But it's a risk and a choice that people want to make. You know what, I'm not their parents. They want to take that risk, they want to take that choice and do whatever they want to do with it. That's their choice. My choice is not to do it. But I'm not condemning them for doing it and not doing it. But I am saying that you can't go on forever and not have a record. You can't have 15 DUIs and nothing shows. Because that showed on the first one that you had. So there's a balance here that you want to compare it to something else. But when you compare it to something else, it doesn't look too very good in my opinion. I wouldn't mind, you know, if you have somebody who says, you know, but it's not, remember, it's not how many times you use it, it's how many times you get caught using it. There's a vast difference there. So my personal thing, I'm not trying to be, excuse the language, a hard ass on anything. But I'm just telling you the fact of your choice. Whoever wants to use it, but who's buying it? Where are they getting it from? What are you going to do there? Somebody's got 5,000 bags of 19 ounces? What happens to
That person would in no way qualify for this program.
Of course, but he's going to say, I'm only doing what the law says. I want to sell it to the guy who wants to use it, so he's going to pay $75. Let me pay $75. I'm just going, I know, out of the realm, but there's possibilities that people do all that kind of stuff, and they're looking for angles. Everybody's looking for angles to make some money. Most of them, some of them don't. We live a little bit happier. I've been high on a lot of things. You know what it is? Just life itself. I don't have to get high on nothing. You'll never see me smoking a joint. Fine, if somebody wants to, that's their choice. You'll never see me drunk. I may have a diabetic seizure, but God gave me that problem. I didn't create it. I didn't ask for that. So what I'm saying is that it's a thing that it's a choice, people's choices. There was a TV named People's Choice at one time. You make a choice, not I. But there's got to be a limit. One time, don't do it again. But if you caught the second time, it shows. I'm not opposed to helping some kid. I'm not opposed to helping some adult who's done it for a long time but only got caught once. But don't get caught the second time. And I agree with Mr. Chairman. there's gotta be something before it gets to the point of ridiculous. And therefore we're going subsequent means forever. So if I wanna throw it in the wall face, I said, this is my 47th time, here's $450. I go do it again, and again, and again, that happens. You can't control society that way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. This is the second time today that I've asked to speak, and by the time it gets to me, I'm really forgetful of what I was going to say. So, I want to hear what the public has to say, because we have a lot of people here who I know are here specifically to speak to this issue. But there are a couple of points I want to make to the statements that were already made. So I don't know about anybody else, but I know a lot of people who smoke marijuana. And it's not something that, it's just like drinking beer. In the sense that most people drink beer their entire lives. It's not something that they often, some people do have beer and then decide, you know what, I'm not going to drink anymore. Not because it's an issue, not because they have a social problem, not because they're an alcoholic, they just, lose their taste for beer. And, with marijuana, I see it much the same way. I don't know a lot of people who say, I'm only going to smoke for this short period of time. It's kind of a life decision. At some point, you lose your taste for it and you stop doing it. So I don't see the problem with the unlimited number of citations. What I would want to add, and I've discussed this with several members of the audience here, is give people an option if they feel that this is becoming a problem in their life, that they have an option to enter into some kind of treatment program or be directed to a treatment program if they feel that this is a problem, and making that part of what we're doing here today. I don't know how, and I'm looking to hear from the public because I know they have some ideas of how, but it does become a financial burden at $450 if you keep getting caught. So that might prompt people to stop it just because of the financial burden, and that's true with a lot of citation programs that we have. The red light cameras, for one, I know we're going to be talking about that. The whole idea is that you pay money, and it's a behavioral change. You decide to stop running red lights. So there are several programs, citation programs that we have that have behavioral modification in mind when you keep receiving increased penalties, speeding tickets and such. So that's one point that I would like to make. And I wish I would have written down the other one because now I don't remember what the other one was, but I'm sure it'll come to me after the public speaks. Thank you, Mr. Ansberg.
Yes, I also want to hear the public speak, but here's something that I've been on 3 or 4 benchmark trips with the Tampa Chamber of Commerce, and one of them was to Denver in October. I toured, and I think I was the only one, that toured a grow house in Denver. It is highly, highly regulated. Highly regulated. The penalties are very severe. This is my point. We don't know what the quality of what people are buying is. We don't know what they mixed it with or not. That's my concern. I tend to agree with Councilmember Montaglione, and also in that it is a very prevalent in our community that it is used. So decriminalizing it is a wise move in that we can clear the courts up, save taxpayers dollars. I also agree with my colleagues that the police officer being the judge and jury is, I'm afraid, a burden that I don't know they signed up for. They're there to protect the public, and I think it needs to have, if you want to put a limit out, now I want to hear from the public. Thank you for allowing me this time.
69. Ladies number 4. 3 minutes, please state your name. And address. Time up. Go. Yes, sir.
Esteemed council members, good morning. My name is Christopher Cano, 1529 West Prison Lane. I am the executive director of the Florida chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. I've spoken before council before. Many of you know the personal struggles that I've been through with my family. I wish this program had been enacted 2 years ago, and I would have incurred thousands of dollars in legal fees, wouldn't have had the issues that I brought to the public. You know, the $75 ticket's a lot cheaper than the 15 grand that I've had too. And I have student loans and I have a Wells Fargo credit card. I put those legal bills on, but it isn't getting paid anytime soon. And you know, that's the nature of the impact of it in real lives, in the working class people's lives. So this program, in essence, is a good thing. Does it go far enough? You know, you brought up some valid points, Councilman Miranda, last hearing. And, you know, as far as are we finding people, is this all about making revenue, or is it really about helping people? And I agree with many of those points. Here's what I want to present to each of you. Cannabis prohibition began out of the Jim Crow era of the 1930s. Now, if each of you were sitting on the city council back in the 1950s, and for many of you that would have been an impossibility because of the laws of the day, right? Jim Crow laws were the laws of the day at that time. In the city of Tampa, think about this, you guys sitting there in the 1950s, national laws, state laws, enforced Jim Crow laws, right? If you, as city council members, had the ability to do something as simple as pass an ordinance which could chip away at those laws, wouldn't you do it? Wouldn't you take that opportunity? Even if it's just a small step. And that's really where we are today, is that these same Jim Crow laws that have been around since the 30s have evolved into our modern day drug laws. And we see the racial and ethnic disparities in arrest. We see the clogging of our criminal justice system. We see the working class, preyed upon by these laws. And we see officers put in difficult positions. You, with this ordinance, have the opportunity not to make monumental change and change the way things happen, but you can chip away at it just a little bit. And isn't some progress better than none? And so that's what I would put to you today, is that's the decision that you have to make, is that isn't some progress better than none? If I was sitting there in those seats in the 1950s, wouldn't I do a little bit to try and decriminalize sitting in the front of the bus because I'm African American? Because that's really, in essence, what you're looking at philosophically with this. And so that's what I'm putting to you today, is that chip away just a little bit. And as a city council, pass a resolution in support to our state legislature and to the President of the United States to reschedule cannabis, to adopt medical marijuana laws, to help out the patients, to change the enforcement priorities. That's really what your decision is today. And even though it isn't perfect, let the legal beagles go ahead and sort out those final details. But take the right step and be on the right side of history. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Speaker.
Hi, thank you. My name is Dana Moffitt Cummings. I am the current executive director of the Florida Libertarian PAC and former chairman of the Libertarian Party of Florida. And first of all, like some of the rhetoric that I've heard in this room over the past month about cannabis is nothing but propaganda, false. I mean, it's just your fear-mongering. You're continuing the fear-mongering of this plant. You're making it sound like it's in the same category of other drugs, and that is not right. That's part of what this type of ordinance would try to move the public away from. It's classifying cannabis as that type of medicine. I know people were saying it's not up to the police. Their job is to serve and protect. And the way that I see it is they are protecting us. By passing this ordinance, they'd be protecting us from the system, from the bad laws that we are having that we are being punished for. And it's not only to get high, as someone was saying. Some people use it for their illness, and they don't get high from it. And it's still the same plant, and they're getting made criminals because of it. Also, you guys are talking about the whole revenue thing, and I think what everyone's missing here is right now they're still making revenue off cannabis arrests, but it's going to the county and the state. You guys are paying police officers to arrest people and then give money to the county and the state. In this way, you guys are government is best done locally, close. You guys should wield your power and keep this money here. Why are we sending it to Tallahassee to keep the cycle going? We need to keep the money here. There's so many reasons why this is. This is a good thing. And I mean, Florida. I think on Amendment 2, Pasco and Hillsborough both voted 58% in favor of medical cannabis. Pinellas was 62% in favor. And that's the people here. I mean, that's this area. That's Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay wants cannabis. And whenever we did internal polling within the Libertarian Party, we found out the decriminalization part of it was polling at like 87% approval to go to civil infraction. And that's here. That's here in Hillsborough County, Pasco County, and Pinellas County. Those are the people that are electing you guys to be here. That's the majority. And this is what they want. And I don't know if you guys, I mean, I don't know if you know that that's what the majority of people want, but I can tell you that it is. And, you know, to sit here and act like it's a hard decision is almost, it's blowing my mind. Whenever we have 23 states that have legalized this plant, Washington, D.C., it's full legalization in there. I mean, why are you letting those politicians have all the fun and make all the rules? You guys take control of here. This is your city. This is our city. And you guys need to start doing here what we need to do here, where you can. And, you know, I think you guys are not giving everybody enough credit. Like as someone mentioned earlier, you guys weren't getting enough credit. Neither are the police officers. Neither are the citizens. You guys aren't giving anybody enough credit. And I think that it's time to. So thank you so much. I hope you consider this.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mariah Barnhart. I'm the CEO of Cannabis, a nationwide organization headquartered here in Tampa, Florida, dedicated to raising awareness of, education about, and access to cannabis as medicine for critically or chronically ill children. My own daughter, Dahlia, was diagnosed at 2 years old with brain cancer. She was on a dozen medications for pain, nerve damage, and to treat the symptoms and side effects of chemo like nausea and vomiting. None of those meds worked, but her organs were becoming very damaged from those medications, and cannabis took her off of all of them, saved her from having to get a feeding tube, and I've seen with my own eyes what this medicine does. And no matter how many times you receive a citation, you're not going to stop getting medicine for your loved ones, your children, your family members. It is a recurring issue, but it should never be criminalized. We're talking a lot today about police officers protecting us, but who protects them? They never want to risk their life over this plant, ever. Not because it's a fifth-time offense or a sixth-time offense. What you find in habitual offenders is they're committing other crimes and would not be eligible for this. So you're very rarely going to have somebody who literally just has cannabis in their possession and deserves to go to jail for any reason. I really ask that on this, you do what lawmakers do, what you're elected to do. We give you that power to take the voice of your constituents and do what we're begging you to do. Please relinquish us from the title of criminal that's been bestowed upon us for saving our loved ones.
Okay, I'm Ed Toulouse, Sulphur Springs, but I'm really here. I've spent a long time, missed my class and everything. I had the motivation is somewhat the same. I spoke about Keys Nose versus Hog Heaven because that was my responsibility to my Masters in Public Health and to a certain extent my time in medical school. And that's a route people go. You get kicked out of medical school, then you go to public health. But in any case, I think somebody spoke last week. Now, my credentials are, I guess, in the late 60s, early 70s, I was in California, in the California Bay Area, and then I moved from there to Madison, Wisconsin. I suspect all of you were here in Tampa, in the Young Republicans and Young Democrats or something, getting involved in something. But anyway, while I was out there, I saw enough to appreciate that it actually is something of a public health problem. It's not really, to my mind, a criminal problem, and I'm in favor of decriminalization, but I'm not in favor of approval. And the thing I notice is you focus on 20 grams or less. Make it 28, then you can say it's a teaspoon. And the Tampa PD go around with a teaspoon, you know, and then you see if it's a teaspoon or not a teaspoon. But then you get a little bit of metrification involved. But in any case, the thing that should be the focus is something a woman came and spoke at the last meeting that I couldn't stay further for. And she mentioned about changes in people up until they're 25 years old. And that's what should be the focus on this as a public health issue. The first $75 should go to like a GWI person gets pulled over, they have to go to school. And then they have to go to school to send the message, this is not socially approved behavior. I wanted to just touch on one or two things. Everybody scrubs up really nice and they wear their best clothes. There were a couple of things that floated around in those times. For one thing, a lot of people said, well, if it's a gatekeeper drug in the black community, there's a very serious issue here. Why should I have to give up my cannabis on behalf of black people? Somehow I didn't like the sound of that. Right off a whole community of people. And there needs to be more study on that. All I could say was, well, I think a professor at Stanford said it was, because that's where I was at the time. But in any case, that's one thing to be considered, and it's the young people. Mr. Cohn brought up a good point about public things, because you could get stoned before Rudolph Giuliani. We could get stoned just walking into the New York Public Library. I mean, that's how much there was dope smoke around.
Good morning. Nice to be back before you again. My name is Michael Minardi. I am an attorney in the state of Florida. I'm also the chairman of Regulate Florida, and also a board member of Normal Florida, and also of the Silver Tour, which is educating seniors on medical marijuana. I want to first clarify some information for you guys. Number one, 88% of the people who start using substances start with alcohol. This has been proven time and time again. Cannabis is no longer the gateway drug. We do not have to worry about our children. In medical states and decriminal states, they have proven that there has been no increase in teen use and actually some decrease in some states as well. The drug war has not done that. Over the 30 years, 40 years of the drug war, it has never decreased use of any substances that are currently illegal. The drug war does not work, and that is proven time and time again. We've spoken a little bit about, and you asked the city attorney for the police department in Tampa about the penalties. It is. It's a $1,000 fine, a year in jail, but also you can lose your license for a minimum of 6 months up to a year. Now, this license suspension is what affects people more than anything, because that affects their ability to maintain a livelihood, to go to work, to be a pizza delivery driver, to do anything that associates with driving. Now, unlike DUIs, these people are not allowed to get a hardship license, meaning they can't go in and get a hardship license for work purposes only. So these people with cannabis arrest, misdemeanor, under 20-gram possession charges are losing their licenses and their potential livelihood with these convictions. Now, the discretion, and you spoke about this, but officers have discretion in almost everything that they do on the force. This isn't a different issue for them. Right now with misdemeanor cannabis, under 20 grams, they have the discretion. They can give a notice to appear or they can make an arrest. This is going to be no different. They can still make that same discretion. Instead of a notice to appear, it's a ticket with money as opposed to wasting court time. I am a criminal defense attorney. It's a big part of my practice. I will sit in court for an hour for an under 20-gram case because the courts are flooded with that. We have to resolve that problem. The court system is overburdened with costs. We have cutting costs. Half of the clerk's offices in this state are closed at 4 o'clock, not open some days of the week, and we need to bring that back, and we can do that by changing the laws and decriminalizing cannabis here. No effect on teens' IQ. And the feds, you talked about the federal government, that they have not done anything, but they in fact have. They have passed the Rollbacher Amendment to funding. So technically, any state that has legal medical marijuana laws or legalized laws, the federal government is defunded. Meaning the Department of Justice, the DEA, cannot spend funds to enforce federal laws in those states. And that has happened, that passed last year, and it has continued to be reaffirmed on the federal level. They have issued the Cole Memo, and they have given guidance to states that want to make reform to do that, and there are already 20 states in this country as well that have decriminalized. So please follow their suit.
Woo!
Thank you very much. Next.
Hi, I'm Renee Petro, and I'm one of the founders of Cannabis as well. Thank you for having us here today. We are looking for progress, not perfection. This is a statewide and ultimately a federal issue, but Tampa decriminalization is a great stepping stone. This is a great local effort towards common sense legislation and a statement to the changing public opinion that the offense should not be greater than the crime. This decriminalization measure does not include plant extracts, therefore parents trying to help their critically ill children and patients who do not smoke cannabis are still in desperate need of broader and more inclusive statewide laws. We need our family, our friends, and our neighbors, and all of the Floridians to vote yes on Amendment 2 in November. I am a parent of a critically ill child who has seizures every day, who hallucinates from his pharmaceuticals every day. And as a parent, it is so hard to watch your child suffer, knowing that cannabis can potentially save their life and give them the best quality of life. Just last night, I had to watch my son hallucinate for 5 hours in my home, okay? Seeing things that are not there. That is unacceptable. That is wrong. Knowing that something could actually help them, we should not be putting people in jail for marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, my name is Gary Stein. I am a resident of Pasco County, but on any given day you will find me in Tampa. I am here not as an advocate of recreational marijuana, but as one for medical cannabis, something which is desperately needed by my family and by the family of many of my friends who are here today. My oldest daughter had a history of migraines, which segued a few years ago into seizures. When she sought medical care, they gave her a plethora of 8 medications, which not only reduced her frontal lobe to decrease her IQ by about 60 points, but also gave her auditory hallucinations and gave her an additional diagnosis of bipolar syndrome. When she lost her job, in part because of these symptoms, she was able to get those medications, and in desperation in getting a sample of the medical cannabis, she was able to try that. During that time, she stopped having seizures for the first time in many, many years. No migraines, none of the symptoms that occurred whatsoever. She was bright. She was the UCF graduate that I always knew she was, and she was back to work. My wife, who lost her eyesight in part because of a genetic disorder that made her retinas detached, lost her eyesight after that to painful glaucoma. Now, she doesn't have her eyesight anymore, but she still has glaucoma, which gives her immense pain. However, she has found out that use of cannabis does reduce that pain, even though it cannot bring back her eyesight at this time. Now, hypothetically, if I had to go to Tampa to procure this medicine for them to give them relief, and if by chance I had gotten caught with this medicine, I would gladly pay the fine for that first time fine. Number one, it's still cheaper than the medications they were taking. Number two, I'd be trying to cure for their needs. Now let's be clear, we're here today not because of the fact that there's a failure in the federal government, not the city government or the state government, the failure in the federal government to deschedule this medication, which was scheduled as one back decades ago because Deputy Attorney General didn't find any sign of harm, but because he claimed that there was not enough evidence, even though that was a medication, a medical pharmacopoeia for many years before that. And of course the state, well, they have tried to pass legislation, but they can't implement it. And they're trying to create a 5 nursery monopoly cabal, which is not working because it's so fiercely competitive. So it falls on the laps of this city council to pass an ordinance that will help this compassionate measure. So I ask and pray for the empathy and the intelligence of this council to pass this ordinance for the sake of its residents and its visitors. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Teresa Miller. I spoke a few weeks ago reading a statement from the Hillsborough County Anti-Drug Alliance Board. Today I'm here on a more personal level, and I was only going to speak to the citation, but it's hard for me not to get a little upset about what I've heard. We've come a long way since 1950, I'll agree. Absolutely, we know a lot more about marijuana and the harmful side effects that it causes. There's studies that come out quite frequently that do talk about IQ, that talk about increased addiction, that talk about lung problems, memory issues, which I can't imagine anyone giving someone with any sort of mental health problems marijuana. I'm not real sure where other groups get their data. I use the National Institute of Drug Abuse, SAMHSA, and Monitoring Our Future. And I will absolutely assure you that Colorado youth increase has skyrocketed since they legalized marijuana.
No, it hasn't.
Not only for recreation, but even before that. That being said, I wanted to say, several years ago, I went and got my mental health master's degree from USF. And at that time, I saw the real power of prevention. So instead of going and working in the community as a counselor, I decided to stay in prevention. I'm not paid by anyone, and I don't have any agenda other than helping our families understand how substance abuse can ruin their families. In the past 3 years, as I've been speaking out in the community, there's only one person whose child is addicted to a stronger drug than marijuana, or has died from opiates or a drug overdose that did not use marijuana or begin to use marijuana that led them down the path of addiction. During my internship, I was able to work with some of our local community rehabs and treatment centers. And it was always so inspiring when I could see how education helped these young people see that the path they were choosing was not going to be the one that they really wanted for themselves, and to give them the tools that they needed to go out in their community and say no to using drugs. Many of them were minority students, clients that we had. And speaking of minority clients, I really expected to see all these people and their families who have been in jail and prison because of marijuana here. But who we see here are those that want it legalized, not the pastors whose congregation members have been affected by being put in jail. And when I'm out in the community, I'm out every day. There's not one day I'm not out talking to somebody about this. When I hand my little card that has educational information on it, just last week, a minister over in St. Pete was so thankful. She has a small congregation over there that she wanted me to come and speak. She goes, this is a tragedy that's killing our families and just destroying them. So lastly, I think the citation is a great idea, but I think we need some really highly structured sanctions in there. First time, they need to go get treatment and be assessed and really find out where they are in their level of use so that they don't go down the path of criminal. So any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Thank you.
Morning, Council. I'm Allison. I'm the board chair of the Hillsborough County Anti-Drug Alliance, and I appreciate your attention on this issue. I know you're all very concerned about substance abuse, which is my main concern. I have a family member, my daughter, who's affected by drug abuse, and I have a little different perspective as far as law enforcement and the criminal justice system getting involved. I don't always see it as something negative, and I think sometimes an arrest can put a person on the right path, such as my daughter, who was arrested, and she went to juvenile drug court here in Hillsborough County, and she has received the help she needs, the treatment she needs, and she is drug-free today in recovery. A lot of people here that have spoken so far are really advocating for the legalization of marijuana or medical marijuana. That's up to the state and the federal government to look at those issues, not a city or county. We, in Florida, just to set everything straight, we do have a low THC marijuana law that's for medical purposes. It is now being implemented. I just heard yesterday that the farms are growing the marijuana. It should be available in June. So we already have a product that should be available soon for some of these families that need it. Also, there is a law that's being discussed, or a bill being discussed right now, that would allow full-fledged marijuana, not smoked, but any other type, for families that have a loved one who is in a terminal condition. So that's being discussed now. So there's several things going on at the state level that will help these families. That's not what we're here to talk about today. So what we're here to talk about is the ordinance. And the biggest issue I think the Anti-Drug Alliance has with it is the unlimited citations. Because when you read it, it's like it says 4 or more. So that doesn't make sense. When you're raising a child, you don't say, okay, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. So you want to have a limit, or people are not going to learn the proper behavior. As far as the drug marijuana, it is a drug, it is a harmful drug. It is harmful especially to anyone under the age of 25. The reason being is that is when the brain is developing. It does not finish until age 25. So any kind of a harmful drug that's introduced can damage that developing brain. And marijuana, there's much more evidence coming out showing that it can cause a loss of IQ points, that it can cause changes in the brain that are shown by scans. And, of course, memory loss, intoxication, poor judgment, poor coordination, all those things. And interestingly enough, it can lead to hallucinations and psychosis, which are some of the symptoms we heard discussed earlier. So what we would like to do, as far as a recommendation, is to recommend that a lower amount of marijuana if possible, because 20 grams is 36 to 40 joints, that's a lot. So possibly 10 grams. Still a citation for first offense only would be ideal. To add sanctions, including education, that's primary. The next thing would be an assessment to see if a person needs help, especially if they're under 25 years old. And as far as officers, I think they always should have discretion to arrest if they feel it's necessary. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. My name is Gary White. I am the Associate Director of the Hillsborough County Anti-Drug Alliance, where we work on improving the health outcomes here in Hillsborough County through substance abuse prevention, education, and advocacy. So I thought it appropriate certainly to come and talk with you today. I've heard a good bit today about making choices, and my hope is that the opportunity is taken really to shape the environment in Hillsborough County, certainly in Tampa, where this ordinance will affect, certainly that will improve the health outcomes. And take that choice really based on research as opposed to anecdotal evidence. When we talk about the research that's, the current research that's out there, Dr. Bertha Madras, Harvard medical faculty has already talked a lot about the new things that we're finding out about marijuana. And certainly, I'm hoping that we can provide that to you either soon, but if you've not seen it, it does talk about the addictive nature. It does talk about the other consequences that happen in the community when use is up. If you think about it in three major components, we talk about the prevention, where we already do education and programs that are based on either nationally recognized evidence programs and practices. We do that in our schools. We do that in churches. We do that throughout the community. And that covers those education classes, that covers the addictive nature and all the health consequences. The second tier would be the early identification. I was glad to hear about the discussion that was talked about the streets. If you can early identify maybe some of those things that you can probably try to prevent the greater costs down the road. I think that kind of concept is appropriate here, because if you think about the wetness or the availability of marijuana in the community and the effect that it might save you maybe on some court dockets today, but will it save you in the future? And certainly all of us here might not be in this body down the road when really the bill comes due. Another thing is we talk about that early assessment and early intervention. Those things are based on also research. The Substance Abuse for Mental Health and Service Administration offers, and certainly at HCAA we have those kind of programs that we offer for free about screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment. We have treatment providers here, but it's better if we catch it with the assessment early. That is evidence-based and will give you some good data to tell you whether you need to refer to treatment or not. And I think lastly, I want to just talk about, there's some similarities and comparisons that's been made. I was 9 years old when my father, I asked my dad for a cigarette. He gave it to me willingly, without hesitation. He also had a can of Bud Light, so we talk about alcohol in that comparison. He gave that to me as well. Had my dad been using marijuana, had I asked for it, I certainly believe that he would have given it to me. But does that mean because I asked for it that it was better for me? Certainly not. I spent 21 years in the Army as a nurse, and I'm glad to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. My message is really quick. We have proof.
Please state your name.
Hector Valdez, I live in the Forestville area. We have proof that prohibition does not work. Therefore, we have to stop jailing people over this illegal vegetation. I support the citation program, and it will help with that. We also have to keep in mind that every time someone is getting arrested for a small possession, their lives are getting ruined. They can't get a job, their records are tainted, and that affects their lives. And that's just plain wrong. The citation program is not going to make things any more legal. It's just going to give the officer the option of not having to put somebody in jail and ruining their lives over a victimless crime. Now, I understand the concerns about our children. I have 3 kids myself. And what we do is we speak to them about drugs, the abuses, and the harms for effects of it. But I think that's the only way for kids of drugs is by the parents being involved in their lives and talking to them. And that way, when somebody comes to them and says, hey, you want to try this? They say, no, thank you. My parents already spoke to me about that. That's the only way that intervention will work. But putting people in jail over illegal vegetation and the victimless crime is completely wrong. Thank you.
My name is Ned Sudak, live here in Tampa. I split time between California and Florida. I'm a medical patient. This is my medical ID for cannabis. I'm also a cannabis consultant from California to Washington State. Just want to take a step back here real quick before we go into this. We started today's meeting with a prayer. And at the end of that prayer, the name of Jesus Christ was invoked. So that means you got to kind of use the Bible as a stepping stone. So I just kind of want to look at a quick passage from the book of Genesis chapter 1 verse 29. Paraphrase, I give to you every seed-bearing plant on the face of this earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. It will be yours for food. Going back to, just coming from where we are, everybody here has pretty much stated that the current system is costing taxpayers a lot of money. The citation program will definitely save people money, taxpayers money. What some of the anti-drug policy people have spoken here today, majority of what they said I do not agree with. However, I do agree with the statements that we are trying to get to full legalization for medical and recreational. With that said, looking at, you guys have stated that federal laws, we don't have the power to change that. We're not trying to change in that sense. If you look at the capital city of our country, Washington, D.C., it's legal. You can go to they've just recently started where you can go in and purchase retail cannabis. We're not going to get to that point here yet, but if we are to be leaders, the city of Tampa is to be leaders in this great state, we need to lead, to continue to do that. And by issuing the citation program, that will be the first step in doing that. Pretty much that. And one other thing, there's twice now I've heard from the meetings from the anti-drug people, they talk about 36 joints out of 20 grams. I don't know how that's possible. Those are like really, really tiny joints. So that's probably, just not necessarily the truth. Like they'll sit there and keep telling you the same lies that we've been fed for the last 80 years and just keep thinking it to be true. But the fact of the matter is they need to be educated. Cannabis, marijuana, as I say, they say it's a drug. It's not a drug. First and foremost, it's a plant. It was put here on earth by nature. And, it doesn't matter what religion you want to call it. There's great spirit, this omnipotent force that created the universe also created that plant. They put it here to be used like anything else. Lettuce, apples, tomatoes, it's not really much different. I thank you guys for your time, and I hope you will pass the citation bill.
Hello, City Council. My name is Carlos Ramita. I am the Deputy Director of the Central Florida chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. I have a few points that I want to make to you guys today. I heard the opposition say about the 30 or so joints from the 20 grams, and I just want to make a point that their source for their statistics, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, actually has a program where they give medical marijuana patients cannabis in the mail, federally legal, and they do this under federal law. And they give 30 joints to these people, and I'm pretty sure that there's a lot less than 20 grams in that container. And I also want to make a point that I'm actually somebody that could have benefited from this ordinance. I'm not a bad guy at all, at least I don't think so. I am actually a bit of an academic. I hold an MBA from Nova Southeastern University, and I actually have 3 bachelor's degrees from the University of South Florida, and I was actually arrested leaving an existentialism class on the way to Kentucky Fried Chicken for 1 gram. And I always have to live with that on my record. And you guys have the opportunity to make sure that people who are innocent, who are not doing any sort of violent crime, not really hurting anybody, not even hurting themselves, have a second chance to not have that stain on their record. And I really urge you guys have the opportunity today to be leaders in the state of Florida. Miami-Dade, Broward County, West Palm Beach has already passed ordinances like this. And you guys can show our state government that the people of Florida really want cannabis legislation to change. 58% of our people voted for Amendment 2. So this is what the people want. And I really think you guys should give it to them. And I also want to make another point that I had a friend that actually recently died of cancer who lived in Tampa. And I urged her to check out cannabis therapy for her condition, and she was afraid to. She was afraid to because of these laws. And if these laws were different, my friend might still be here today. So I ask you today, in Stephanie's name, Stephanie Good's name, to consider changing these laws. Thank you.
Good morning, council. My name is Dottie Grimster, and I live in Harold, here in Tampa, Florida. And today I do serve on many boards, locally and state and national. But today I'm not here to